بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد to proceed. So inshallah we'll proceed with the types of hearts. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, pay attention to this hadith, like all of the hadith. But in this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives us parables to the hearts, different types of hearts. The heart is the recipient of the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if the recipient is malfunctional, then the reception will also be limited, will be defective, and you will not receive much of the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and I will read the hadith in Arabic first and then in English. And this is a hadith that's reported by Bukhari and Muslim from Abi Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu. مثل ما بعثني الله به من الهدى والعلم كمثل الغيث الكثير أصاب أرضا فكان منها نقية فأنبتت الكلأ والعشب الكثير قبلت الماء فأنبتت الكلأ والعشب الكثير وكانت منها أجادب أمسكت الماء فنفع الله بها الناس فشربوا وسقوا وزرعوا وأصاب منها طائفة أخرى إنما هي قيعان لا تمسك ماء ولا تنبت كلأ فذلك مثل من فقه في دين الله ونفعه ما بعثني الله به فعلم وعلم ومثل من لم يرفع بذلك رأسا ولم يقبل هدى الله الذي أرسلت به. The likeness of the guidance and knowledge with which Allah has sent me is a great deal of rain which falls on a land. So the guidance is the rain, and the land here is your heart. Some of the land is fertile. It absorbs the water and brings forth a lot of grass and vegetation. Other parts are infertile, but they hold the water, and Allah benefits the people thereby so that they may drink and water their animals and irrigate their lands. They take from this land to other lands that are fertile and irrigate the lands. The third part is plains, which do not hold the water and where no plants grow. This is like the person who understands the religion of Allah, the first example. The land that could both hold the water and it's also fertile. So it holds the water for those who want the water, and it benefits from the water itself by growing the grass and vegetations, and holds the water for those who want to take the water to drink or to give water to their animals or to irrigate land farther away from this one. This is like the person who understands the religion of Allah and benefits from the message with which Allah has sent me. So he learns and he teaches others. So he learns and he teaches others. But he is benefiting himself. He is growing his own garden. That guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger, like the rain falls on the heart, then you grow your own gardens in the heart. Devotion, dedication, sincerity, humbleness, commitment, integrity, love, hope, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nasiha for the people, being, sincere to the people, and so on and so forth. So all of these are gardens, different gardens that you're growing in your heart. So basically you receive the rain and you're growing your own gardens, but you still can give some of the water to others to benefit from it and grow their own gardens. That is the one who learns and benefits from what he learns and teaches and benefits others of this knowledge, of the message with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the person who does not pay attention, and the likeness of the person who does not pay attention or accept the guidance of Allah with which I was sent. So the Prophet told us of two people, but he gave us three different plans, because the example in the middle is so obvious from his explanation. The example in the middle is when you could learn and contain the knowledge. You have the ability to absorb, to contain the knowledge, and you have the ability to disseminate the knowledge, relate it to others, but you don't benefit of this knowledge yourself. And certainly this example, like number 3, would be all doomed. Yet one of them is able to relate that knowledge to people who may benefit from it, and one of them is like sandy plains. There is no benefit in them whatsoever. They don't contain the knowledge, they don't relate it, and it falls like when the rain falls on the sand, it seeps through the land, and then there would be no benefit whatsoever from this land or these kinds of hearts. So which heart would you like to be? You know, if you want your salvation and survival, there is one way, which is the first one, number 1. To learn and to benefit others. Now, to learn and benefit others, why is it not mentioned in this hadith, the 4th type, those who can learn and benefit themselves, but they have no capacity of benefiting others? But because you will have, if you have your own gardens, you will be able to benefit others somehow, in some way, even if it is little. If you can grow your own gardens and in your heart, humbleness, how much of da'wah is given by conduct, by the role model, by the good example? Much of the da'wah is actually given by good conduct and role model. So if you are able, and this is like sometimes what is not mentioned in the hadith is just as important as what's mentioned. If you can, extract the benefits. So if you are able to benefit, if you are able to grow your own gardens, then you receive the water, and there will be certainly a benefit for others. You may not contain the knowledge in the sense of being able to sit down in a classroom and give a lecture, but the fact that you contained it enough to grow your own gardens means that people will benefit of this. They will be affected by it, they will be touched by whether they are Muslim or not Muslim. And many histories, stories in the seerah of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ of people who were not scholarly. Many of the companions were not scholarly. Many of the companions had difficulty reciting the Quran. That's one thing that we may not know. But many of the companions were not particularly scholarly. Yet they were, for instance. But the idea here is, you see how much they benefited the whole world. So see how this one generation, liberated the entire humanity from the captivity of shirk, disbelief, myth, superstition, tyranny, multitudes of things. That one generation, within 100 years, liberated most of the inhabited world from all of these ailments. So this is a very beautiful hadith that we need to contemplate, and then we need to sort of decide which one of those hearts we want to be. Now, in order for you to have this heart that is fertile, and benefit from this rain, this goodly rain that comes down, through the revelation, through the wahy, the Quran and the Sunnah, what do you need to do? You need work. Fertile lands need work, right? You weed the land out, you fertilize the land, because you may not have fertile land just like this, that is innate. Some of this needs to be acquired. And you acquire this by weeding out your land, weeding out your heart from diseases, because the weeds, all of those bad qualities, can overtake your heart. And then, no matter how much rain falls, there is so much weed that is that is devouring all the good vegetations, not leaving any room for the good vegetations and the grass to grow. So unless you take the weeds out, you will not be able to grow good vegetations or grass. So that is step number one, to weed out your heart from those diseases, ailments, sicknesses, bad qualities. Step number two is to fertilize it, to make it more accepting of the good goodness in the revelation. And you fertilize it by promoting all the qualities, all the good qualities of the hearts. Second hadith. This hadith has some controversial authenticity as far as it goes up to the Prophet ﷺ. The traceable form of it is controversial. But the report from Hudhayfa is authentic. And many scholars would say that Hudhayfa would not actually bring this up from his own making. That Hudhayfa would not be able to make up this. This is something that should be traceable to the Prophet ﷺ, even if the authentic form stops at Hudhayfa, radiallahu anhu. But if Hudhayfa related this to us, then he must have heard it from the Prophet ﷺ, because this type of knowledge is not to be produced by someone short of the Prophet ﷺ. This is not a fiqhi ijtihad where Hudhayfa can basically use his reasoning, but this is rather knowledge that should be limited to the Prophet ﷺ and may not be known by others. So we would consider this to be coming from the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ said there are 4 types of hearts. In the traceable version, which is traced through Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, the Prophet ﷺ said, القلوب أربعة فقلب أجرد فيه مثل السراج أزهر وذلك قلب المؤمن وسراجه فيه نوره وقلب أغلف مربوط على غلافه فذلك قلب الكافر وقلب منكوس وذلك قلب المنافق عرف ثم أنكر وقلب مصفح وذلك قلب فيه إيمان ونفاق فمثل الإيمان فيه كمثل البقلة يمدها ماء طيب ومثل النفاق فيه كمثل القرحة يمدها القيح والدم فأي المادتين غلبت صاحبتها غلبت عليه. A pure heart, there are 4 types of hearts. First, a pure heart that has a shining lamp, and that is the heart of the believer. And the lamp inside it is the light of faith. The second is a covered up heart with ties on its cover. A covered up heart or a wrapped heart, a sealed heart with the seal tied. And that is the heart of the non-believer. Basically, he never opened up to the truth. So it is sealed and the seal is tied. He never opened up to the truth. And an upside down heart. Arafa thumma ankar. He knew and then he rejected. And that is the heart of the munafiq, the hypocrite. Basically, it was able to contain some water, some guidance. The munafiq goes through stages, goes through phases. There is reluctance, because the fact that you're immersed within the community of the believers, it will be impossible for you to not see glimpses of light here and there. And then you walk a little bit towards the light, and then you stop. And you turn your back to it, and you walk away. And so on and so forth. There is this reluctance. So it is an upside down heart, meaning at one point, it does accept the truth. It's right side up. And then it turns upside down, and then loses the truth that is accepted, and becomes unable of receiving more or accepting more of the guidance of the revelation. That is the upside down heart, the heart of the hypocrite. And then there is the mixed up heart. That's the heart of the one, the majority of us. The mixed up heart is the heart in which there is both faith and hypocrisy. فيه مادتان. It has two elements, the element of faith and the element of nifaq. The example of faith in it is like a small plant that grows with good, or a sprout that grows with good water, and the example of hypocrisy in it is like a wound or an ulcer that grows with pus and blood. It gets supplied by pus and blood. So whichever overtakes the other takes over that heart. Whichever overtakes the other takes over that heart. Basically, that is the ongoing struggle. Remember the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the fourth hadith in the Hadith al-Nawawiyya, in which he said, by Allah, with whom there is no God, one of you will do the works of the people of paradise until there is only an arm span between him and it, and then he will be overtaken by the destiny, and he will do the works of the people of hellfire and enter it. That's it. That's the explanation of that. Basically, you have two tributaries feeding into this heart. There is the tributary that is feeding this heart with the element of faith, and there is the tributary that is feeding into this heart the element of hypocrisy. Water, pus, and blood are both coming into this heart. In order for this heart to remain healthy, it will need to cut off the tributaries of pus and blood. And it needs to open up the tributaries, widen them. The tributaries that are bringing in the goodly water that will nourish this heart and make it healthier. And your ongoing struggle is to basically guard the posts of your heart and make sure that what you allow into your heart is the good water, and you do not allow the pus or blood into your heart. So what are examples of this pus and blood? Multitudes of examples, all of their weaknesses, human weaknesses, all of human weaknesses, all of the evil inclinations, are examples of this pus and blood that's growing the hypocrisy in your heart. So what does this mean? Imagine yourself like there are two streams that are coming into your heart. One is bringing in water, goodly water. One is bringing in pus and blood all the time. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said, all the time. So it means that you have to be extremely proactive about your heart. Otherwise, if you just stay, passive about the condition of your heart, by your nature, insan, zalum, jahul, ignorant and transgressor, by your selfish nature, by your egotistic tendencies, by your evil inclinations, by your surroundings, which are, full of evil and drag you down and pull you down, you're destroyed. Like, if you're passive about it, if you're not doing much, if you're neutral, if you're just living day by day and you're not worrying much about the state of your heart, and you leave your heart for the shaitan to do his work, and the dunya to do its work, and your own evil inclinations to do their work, and so on, if that is what you do, then you're destroyed. Iblis wa dunya wa nafsi wal hawa kayfa al-khalas wa kulluhum a'da'i. Iblis and the dunya and myself, my nafs and hawa, my vanities, my desires. Kayfa al-khalas. How could I reach salvation when all of them are my enemies? So if you're inactive, they are not inactive. If you're inactive, they are not inactive. If you're neutral, they are pulling you to one side. So if you decide to be neutral, or if you're comfortable, sitting around and waiting for your heart to be purified without much effort, without much diligence, without much vigilance, then you can imagine who's pulling. It's Iblis, the dunya, the worldly life, the dunya with all of its temptations and all of wanafsi, your ego. That is all of your negative inclinations working against you. Wal hawa and the desires. Is it obvious? Is it clear? That if you're not extremely proactive about it, and if you're not standing there, working so hard to block the entrances of the pus, remove that water, holding your bucket and trying to remove the pus and the blood and to widen the tributaries of good water, all good actions, all good qualities. Unless you're doing this and working all the time and busy all the time with this, then certainly we will be destroyed. فَأَيُّهُمَا غَلَبَتْ صَاحِبَتَهَا غَلَبَتْ عَلَيْهِ. Whichever of these two overtakes the other, it will overtake that heart. And basically that is the person that is doing the works of the people of paradise, but then the pus and blood is getting more and more in his heart. He's still able to manage to have more water than pus and blood. More water into his heart than pus and blood. So ultimately the equation is still in favor of faith. So he's doing the works of people of paradise and he's faithful. He still has faith. But then it could be just very brief time that is needed by the pus and the blood to overtake, to come over the water. And then that is the threshold. That's the crossing point for him from faith into complete hypocrisy, into disbelief. And if he died at that time, then certainly he is destroyed completely. Okay. Yes?
Can this be related to the hadith on the first page where we are warned saying that you lead your life all to the good and then your arms away from the being lost. So if we let this blood and pus get into us more often than the water, can this person be compared to this person who...
That is the person. That is him. That is him. The one who lived his entire life, that's what I said. The water is still more. And he is still doing the works of the people of paradise. But he's not paying attention to the rise of pus. It's getting more and more and more. And then there is one point where the pus crosses this threshold of being less than the water to being more and to taking over. And that is when he moves to the other side. So it means you have to stand guard of your heart, the posts of your heart. Now, practically speaking, when you're guarding the posts of your heart, you have to identify the shaitan's Trojan horses into your heart. Those are the weak spots in your heart. Everyone has his own weak spots. And that's what we will go over in this section about the purification. The first thing when you think about our journey in this life, where did we start? Where did humanity start? In Jannah, right? That's where we started, in Jannah. So Adam and Eve were created in Jannah, they lived in Jannah, and then they were evicted from Jannah at one point, driven away from Jannah. So the Prophet ﷺ, and this hadith was reported from Anas and Abi Hurairah and others, both reported by both Bukhari and Muslim, said, يَهْرَمُ ابْنُ آدَمْ وتشب منه اثنتان الحرص على المال والحرص على العمر. That the son of Adam will grow senile and two things in him will remain youthful: eagerness for wealth and longevity. So no matter what, no matter how the son of Adam grows senile, and that applies to most of humanity, the very, very vast majority of humanity. No matter how senile you grow, you will always want more money, even if you may not have much use for it. Like, think about the people who want more money. Like, think about the people who have billions of dollars and they're working so hard to make more. And that is not because they want to give it for charitable causes or anything of that nature. They just want more. But how are you going to use it? Like, honestly speaking, after having, $1 billion, how do you get to use the money? Where, how? Like, because if you have $1 billion, then you can have your own private jet, and you could have your little island and your house on your little island. But so what is after that? Yes.
Is this hadith mentioning like the lack of other virtues? Is that why it says will remain youthful? So these two virtues are still present, or
Those are not virtues.
those are negative qualities?
Negative
But
qualities.
is it highlighting the lack of other virtues? Because these two.
No, it is highlighting the persistence of those two qualities, how they are deeply inculcated into our being, as human beings. We're always for these two. We always want long life and abundant wealth. Long life and abundant wealth. So Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said these two things caused the Adam to be evicted from paradise. See, as in Surah Taha, فَوَسْوَسَ إِلَيْهِ الشَّيْطَانِ قَالَ يَا آدَمْ هَلْ أَدُلُّكَ عَلَى شَجَرَةِ الْخُلْدِ وَمُلْكٍ لَا يَبْلَى. The shaitan whispered to him and said, O Adam, shall I direct you to the tree of eternity and position that will not deteriorate? Because if you have long life in poverty, that is not very exciting, right? Long life in poverty. But, when you... but it becomes so exciting when you have this abundant wealth and long life. And the shaitan promised them eternity and abundant wealth. The two that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about. Eagerness for money, wealth, and eagerness for longevity. So those are the two things that the shaitan promised Adam of. So Ibn al-Qayyim said these are the two things that got Adam out of paradise. So he will not return until he gives them up. And he mentioned the ayah in Surah At-Tawbah. إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة. Which means, indeed, Allah has purchased from the believers their lives and their properties for that they will have paradise. Because you can't deceive Allah. You cannot deceive Allah. Those are the two things that humanity favored over Jannah, over the life in Jannah. And if you want to go back to Al-Jannah, you give up these two first, and then you go. You get admitted into the Jannah. Without you giving up these two, you don't get back.
So how accurate is that? Like, how come if you don't give up these two, you don't go back to Jannah? So some people are rich, they pay their zakah, for example, and they live long
No,
life.
you give them up, like we said many times. It is not about you give them up in the sense of favoring Allah over these two.
You give the love of the heart, their love in their heart?
In your heart. They do not become the main driving force for you. They don't move you. You don't favor them over Allah's pleasure. You don't seek them at the expense of disobeying Allah or going against Allah's rules. Next, why did we start with greed? Why did we start with greed for longevity and for wealth? Because these are the two things that got us out of paradise. And we really have to tackle them, because Allah made it conditional for us to go back. That we sell, He purchased. Do you know what it means that He purchased? إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة. That you do not believe that they are yours. You don't believe that your life is yours. You don't believe that the property is yours. It is Allah's. I sold. But do we really believe so? Do you really believe that you're done with the contract? It's a contract. Do you feel that you already sold and that's it? You're done with that contract. You sold to Allah, surely, because you could sell to other beings as well. But that is the point of no return. When you're done with the contract, and that's it. The contract is finalized. And you could make this contract with Allah, and you can make it with others. But keep in mind that Allah will not accept any part of this contract unless it is entirely His. He does not accept partners. He does not have partners, and He does not accept partners. And He does not accept any mixed intentions. So unless your contract is purely with Him, you have no contract with Him. You have no covenant with Him. So we must always ask ourselves if we're content with the contract and if it is finalized. The second is self-conceit. Abu Sulaiman al-Darani rahimahullah said, how can a sane man be conceited about his work when it is but a gift and blessing from Allah that he should thank Him for? How could a sane man be conceited? Self-conceit should not translate as a ghurur. Self-conceit should translate as an ujb. Because ghurur is self-deceit. And the difference between self-conceit and self-deceit is that self-conceit is when you like what you do. Self-deceit is when you're deceived. You deceive yourself. You deceive yourself by so many things. You could deceive yourself by so many things, including this conceitedness. Could be also deceptive. Could be, false sense of security. But he says here that you should not have ujb, you should not have self-conceit with what you do, because what you do is but a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that requires a show of gratefulness. As we said yesterday, or maybe today, that you can't thank Allah enough. Because if you thank Him, you need to thank Him for guiding you to thanking Him. If you show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you should certainly show more gratitude for having guided you to show Him gratitude. Because when you show gratitude for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is this in your benefit or His benefit? It is in your benefit. And when you show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is this by your own goodness or by the tawfiq of Allah, the guidance of Allah and the tawfiq of Allah that He allowed you and permitted you to show gratitude for Him, and that He empowered you and enabled you to show gratitude for Him? So that is where you always need to stay. We'll take some of the examples on the stations. So truthfulness is one of the stations that you need. Station versus a condition or status, maqam versus al-hal, is a place where you always abide. You don't leave it. You don't go out of it. And even if you go to other stations, you don't leave that station. You stay in it. But you can master many stations at the same time. So the station of truthfulness. Sa'al ibn Hanif radiallahu anhu said, the Prophet ﷺ said, he who asks Allah for martyrdom, Allah will raise him to the high status of the martyrs, even if he dies on his own bed. من سأل الله الشهادة بصدق بلغه الله منازل الشهداء. So if you ask Allah the martyrdom with truthfulness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you reach the rankings of martyrs even if you died in your own bed. And that is the benefit of truthfulness. So there are two contrasting ahadith about those who are truthful and those who are not truthful. One was reported by Bukhari and Muslim from Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, and this is a known hadith in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَوَلْ مَنْ يُسَعَّرُ بِهِمُ النَّارِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ ثَلَاثًا. First people with which the fire will be kindled on the day of judgment are three people. Who are those three people? متصدق وشهيد
Scholar. Scholar.
قارئ. So the mutasaddiq, which is the one generous, charitable person, shaheed, the martyr, and the qari, the scholar, they will be brought before Allah, and most of you know the hadith. And Allah will remind them of His bounties on them, and they will remember them. And then He will say to each one of them, what have you done? What have you done with my favors? And each one of them will mention. So the qari will say that I learned, the Quran for your sake and taught it. And Allah will say to him, kadabt, you lied. You learned it so that people may say he's qari. And it was sad. So he will be dragged to the hellfire. And then the shaheed, first the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the shaheed, and then the qari, and then the mutasaddiq. So the shaheed will be brought before Allah. And then Allah will remind him of His favors. What you have done with my favors? And he will say, I fought in your cause until I was killed. And he will say, no, you lied. You fought so that the people may say he's brave, and it was sad, and he will be dragged to the hellfire. And the last one will be the mutasaddiq, charitable person, who will be brought before Allah, and Allah will ask him, what have you done with my favors? And he will say, I gave in every path you would like me to spend them. So I gave it for every cause, for every charitable cause, I gave money. And he would not be lying about this. He did give for every charitable cause. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say to him, Kathab, you lied. Because He did not belie him concerning the first part, which is that he gave, but concerning the second part, which is that he gave for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you spent so that people may say that he's generous, and it was said, and he would be ordered to the hellfire, or dragged to the hellfire. That is one end, or one image or scenario. Take the other scenario and contrast them. When Muslim reports from Jabir radiallahu anhu that the Prophet ﷺ, when they were marching towards Tabuk, and Tabuk is Ghazwat al-Usra, it's the battle of hardship. So the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim were marching in the middle of the desert of Arabia, and the sun of the middle of the summer, to fight against the Romans. So you can imagine, you're leaving Medina at the time where the fruits have become ripe. You're ready to enjoy the fruits of Medina and sit in the shades of Medina and so on. but you're commanded to march through the desert of Arabia in the middle of the summer, despite the very meager means, to confront the Romans and their allies. This is, you can imagine why this was called Ghazwat al-Usra, the battle of hardship. Basically, you're giving up everything. You have to be given up. You have to have completely finalized your contract with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to actually make this march. And then, in the middle of their walking or marching, the Prophet ﷺ says to them, إِنَّ بِالْمَدِينَةِ رِجَالًا مَا سِرْتُمْ مَسِيرًا وَلَا قَطَعْتُمْ وَادِيًا إِلَّا شَارَكُوكُمُ الْأَجْرَ. قالوا وهم في المدينة رسول الله قالوا وهم في المدينة حبسهم العذر. So the Prophet ﷺ tells them, in the middle of this, there are men that you left behind in Medina. You have not traversed the valley or marched towards your enemy, except that they took, that they were your partners in the reward. شاركوكم الأجر. They took similar reward as yours. And then the Sahaba said to the Prophet ﷺ, while they are in Medina, O Messenger of Allah, because it's surprising. We're going through all of this hardship, and they take this similar reward. And the Prophet ﷺ said to them, yes, they were prevented from marching with you because of a valid excuse. They had a valid excuse to stay behind. So whether they were incapable, whether they... but Allah described them in the Quran. He said, تَوَلَّوْا أَعْيُنُهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ حَزَنًا أَلَّا يَجِدُوا مَا يُنْفِقُونَ. That when you told them that you can't take them, that they turned back and walked away, and their eyes were full of tears, that they cannot afford to sustain their mission, to spend and to come with you. So that is the Sahaba who wanted to go out with the Prophet ﷺ in Ghazwat al-Usra, and the Prophet ﷺ told them, I don't find mounts to take you on. I don't find camels or horses or mules or anything to carry you. You do need the means to get there. And you have nothing, and I can't, I can't take you. So you can imagine people that were told that, you should stay back in Medina, enjoy the fruits and the shade of Medina and so on, and don't come with us through this, difficult venture. Don't go through this difficult venture with us. And then they were crying and their eyes were full of tears because they can't make it. So isn't that truthfulness? Truthfulness here is not only about saying the truth. Truthfulness here means truthfulness in commitment. Like when you say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, this is a testimony. Are you truthful in declaring this testimony? Is your commitment to Allah a true commitment? That is when it is proven. These are examples, these are tests of the truthfulness of your commitment. And that those Sahaba certainly proved to have the highest degree of truthfulness. Because of that, as the Prophet ﷺ says here, they get the full reward even while they're in Medina. The full reward like everyone else. Those who actually went to the battlefield, but for other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who were actually killed in the battlefield. So in the eyes of people, they were martyrs, but they didn't actually do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, were dragged to the hellfire. whereas the others that stayed behind were, given the full reward of the Mujahideen. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud in this muttafaq alayhi or agreed upon hadith reports from the Prophet ﷺ that he said, truth leads to piety and piety leads to Jannah. A man persists in speaking the truth till he is enrolled with Allah as truthful. Also leads to vice, and vice leads to the fire, and a person persists on telling lies until he is enrolled as a liar. So basically, truthful, like I said, is not only truthful in speech, it's truthfulness of the heart, truthfulness of commitment. But the truthfulness in speech is a necessary requirement of the truthfulness of your heart. You remember the hadith? لا يستقيم إيمان عبد حتى يستقيم قلبه ولا يستقيم قلبه حتى يستقيم لسانه. The faith of a believer is not straight until his heart is straight, and his heart is not straight until his tongue is straight. So basically, truthfulness of the tongue invites truthfulness of the heart, truthfulness of the interior. Truthfulness of the tongue invites, calls upon, invokes the truthfulness of the heart, and vice versa. They are a reflection of one another. Al-Hasan ibn Ali, in this hadith that's reported by Tirmidhi, reported from the Prophet ﷺ that he said, دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك فإن الصدق طمأنينة والكذب ريبة. Give up what is doubtful to you, for that which is not doubtful, for truth is peace of mind, or brings about peace of mind, and falsehood is doubt, or brings about doubt. And when we hear this, looks like the battery is. Truthfulness, basically, as defined by other people, is conformity of the exterior to the interior. Like the consistency, the lack of discrepancy between the exterior and the interior. And your exterior should be a reflection of your interior. So do not try to exaggerate your exterior. Do not try to pretend. Try to be yourself. Because that is when there is this consistency between the exterior and the interior. Try to be yourself so that you have this consistency, so that you have this fluidity, harmony between your exterior and your interior. Because otherwise, you will have a conflict that will cause you to be reluctant, hesitant, doubtful, and will cause you to have this inner conflict, this persistent inner conflict that will ruin your relationship with Allah and ruin your relationship with people and make you always anxious. Make you always anxious, lest the people get to know something about you that you hate, that you did not want them to know. If you're ready at any time and some of the scholars used to say this, to get a visit from the Prophet ﷺ to your home. You should, in fact, you should be aware that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching over you all the time. So whether you're getting a visit or not, you're being visited. Everything that you know, that you do is seen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just 1 second. Get some tissue here. But basically, when the interior and exterior are true reflections of each other, and there is no hiding, there is no exaggeration, there is no makeup. You know, you don't put a lot of makeup. That does not mean that you commit sin in public because you commit sin in private. It doesn't mean that. The Prophet said, "Kullu ummati mu'afa illa al-mujahirun." All my nation will be forgiven except for those who are public about their sin. Because when you commit sin in public, that is inviting people to cross the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is making people more daring of crossing the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you should not. But at the same time, if you know your weakness, don't pretend something else. Like, just stay humble. Stay humble. Keep humble. Do not commit sins in public so that you would have like a true reflection of your interior, but stay humble, recognizing your weaknesses, and try to work on your interior to fix it. But to present a different image on your exterior, a counter image of your interior, that is when you're not being truthful. That is when you're not being truthful. Also, being truthful with yourself in commitments. When you make commitments with yourself, with the people, resolutions, resolve, etc., then you have to be truthful. Meaning, take what you can handle, and once you have taken a commitment, live up to it. Be truthful to your commitments, and live up to your responsibility. I will defer the station of Muraqabah until tomorrow, inshallah, and I will take some questions from you here. Stop here, inshallah.
So, Sheikh, in the book of is it true Imam Ibn Qayyim says that no one can attain any of these stations except that there are 4 major stations at the beginning he has to go through, which is al-yaqadha, the awakening. And is that true, or anyone? Is there an order for the stations, or they all come at the same time, or
They overlap. There is an order for the stations, but the stations overlap. And we chose some of them because we can't cover all the stations, certainly, in the span of this course. But we chose some of these stations. Yet, these stations are all necessary, and they all overlap, because the baseline of each of these stations has to exist. Can you imagine a believer who has no truthfulness whatsoever? Can you imagine a believer who has no watchfulness whatsoever? Can you imagine a believer who has no remembrance whatsoever? Can you imagine a believer who has no shukr, or gratitude whatsoever? Or a believer who has no rida, or contentment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whatsoever? Or a believer who has no hope in Allah? You wouldn't be able, it's not conceivable that a believer would not have any of those. So all of those stations, you have to have the baseline of them all together by necessity, the necessity of being faithful. You have to have the baseline. but you advance in some of them faster than you advance in others, because you need to prioritize within those stations so that you could sort of naturally advance into them, because some of them are based on others, built on top of each other. So is it time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only, is it true that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only guide those who seek guidance? Is there any someone who wants guidance could still be led outside of Islam? If so, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow people to fall into disbelief if they were trying to earn His favor? No one will seek Him with sincerity and get rejected. No one will seek Allah as duly as he can and sincerely as he can and get rejected by Allah. It doesn't happen. And if one saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yet he was not given the means to guidance, he did not hear of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not come across Muslims who told them about the nature of Islam, and so on, their test will be repeated in the hereafter. But no one will be rejected if they sincerely sought Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If someone is relying almost 100% on life support, does the family have the choice to wait him/her out until they die, or at what point do they pull the plug? No, the treatment or seeking treatment is it could be any one of the 5 categories of legal values, or categories of ahkam. So it could be wajib, mustahab, mubah, makruh, and haram. So when is treatment wajib? If the disease causes harm and the medicine is safe and affordable, then treatment is wajib. When is treatment haram? If you're using something haram for treatment, when there are alternatives or when the benefit is not established. And then there are various categories. So life support treatment, what is life to begin with? Life is a state of being that separates humans from plants and inanimate objects by 2 qualities, al-ilm wal-irada, which is knowledge and will. And when you lack the 2 qualities, al-ilm wal-irada, then you have lost the essence of human life. So if there is no input or output, why should they keep why should they keep a group of cells together, a group of tissues together, making a body? Why should they keep them in this state of being without input or output? You're not receiving anything, and you're not sending anything. No ilm, no irada. So in this case, life support is not mandatory to be had for people who have cases that are terminal and hopeless. Who determines this? Trustworthy physicians will determine this. If the case is terminal and hopeless. And in this case, much of the resources will be saved for people who do need life support to get over some difficulty with their health. And sometimes they need the life support for a month, 2, 3, but it depends on whether it is determined that their case is terminal and hopeless or not. Certainly there are various, you can't talk about this because it takes too long. But there are various forms. There is brain death, which is different from prolonged coma, which is different from persistent vegetative state. And each one of them has its own rulings and its own detailed rulings, because they all vary in what they are defined Islamically and how they are handled Islamically, how they are defined and how they are handled. Those of you who have expertise, editorial or scientific or otherwise, or they would like to help, in any capacity, with a website that Brother Asad told you about, Islam Proven. Here's his email. So you can contact him there.
After my first name.
Or, is this good enough? I'll take this one. Is there, so did we answer the issue? So life support is not obligatory to keep. We can take people off life support. If Allah means for them to live, they will live. If Allah does not mean for them to live, then there is no benefit or use in just keeping them indefinitely on life support. Is there any supplication narrated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask Allah for martyrdom? Supplication to ask Allah for martyrdom according to the Sunnah. So this is according to the Sunnah. You ask Allah for martyrdom. Allah marzuqni shahada. Allah give me martyrdom. من سأل الله الشهادة بصدق بلغ الله منازل الشهداء. So you say, oh Allah, give me martyrdom.
Isn't there a dua for Ali radiallahu anhu? He asked Allah for martyrdom after a long life, or say?
No, it's not from the Prophet ﷺ. Each one of them had their own thing. Umar radiallahu anhu said, Allahumma inni as'aluka ash-shahadata fi madinati nabi, Allahumma inni as'aluka ash-shahadata wa mawtan fi madinati nabiyyik. I ask you to martyr them and to die in the Medina of your Prophet. And subhanAllah, it's amazing that he was given both. Yes. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the issue of sincerity in your deeds and the three people who are going to be the first to kindle the flame of the fire. What would be the approach to certain deeds? For example, memorizing Quran is one that comes to mind. If you memorize Quran, for example, to impress your parents or to make them happy, because you know that when they hear you recite Quran or when they hear you give some piece of knowledge, that they become happy, so you do it for their pleasure. Does the reward only entail the pleasure that you've given them, or does it still count as both memorizing Quran and giving them pleasure, or does that fall under showing off?
And you are pleasing your parents because of what?
Because you wish to please them.
Because Allah wants you to please your parents. Then it will be, the reward will be according to this intention. So to seek to please your parents is reward worthy. So you get reward for this. But ultimately, the memorization of the Quran is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ultimately it is deficiency to want by this to please your parents versus pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or for your main aim or goal to be the pleasure of your parents when you know that this is something with which Allah's pleasure could be sought. So there is certainly an obvious deficiency here in this intention. Yes?
Sure. Comment on that. What about in cases when you see brothers and sisters and they're about to get married and the sister wants the brother to memorize a certain surah as a mahar? How would the brother find the intention or what kind of intention can he have in this type of scenario?
If the sister asked him to memorize certain parts of the Quran as her dowry,
No one asked for that now.
okay. Well, it is okay. He could still memorize it because ultimately he knows that it is a good thing for him to memorize the Quran, and he will please that sister and get married to her. She's a righteous woman, and then he will benefit from memorizing the Quran, and then he will use this Quran to pray and to these things. You could combine all of those together, and then eventually it is not. It's not hypocritical. When it becomes hypocritical, if he's really after the sister and that's it, and he's just memorizing the Quran with a grain of salt, and that is certainly hypocritical. But if he figures that this is encouragement, or if you apply for Medina University, for instance, or some place, and they tell you that you need to memorize 6 juz's of the Quran, and then you start memorizing to get there, because it's good to go to Medina University and to study knowledge and so on. Eventually, ultimately, you're working still within the pleasure of Allah, within the scope of His pleasure. So it should be okay. Even though there is some deficiency in this intention. Because whenever there is an act with which Allah's pleasure is sought, and you do it for less than Allah's pleasure, the deficiency is obvious. But in order for you to have no deficiency, then you would correct your intention so that Allah's pleasure is your primary goal, and wanting to get married to that sister becomes your secondary goal in memorizing the Quran. And the problem is, people would ask, but how can they do this so hard? Like I said, it is not about every incident separately or individually. It's about your whole life. If Allah is your main concern, He will be always your main concern in every situation and every circumstance. It is not piecemeal. It's not really chopped up. It's one focus. And if Allah is your main concern all the time, He will continue to be your main concern here as well. Yes? Or you are first. Yeah. Go ahead.
هنا بالمدينة رجال الذين شاركوكم في الأجر. هل الأجر ده مضاعف كمثل الذين خرجوا يعني؟
Inshallah, it would be. When this ajr be multiplied, like the people who actually went out, inshallah, it would be mudaf. But there are things that the people who went out will do that would be reward worthy on their way and coming back, that they may not attain those rewards. They will just attain the reward of the expedition that they intended. The expedition that they intended.
وحفظ القرآن يعني عندما يحتاج الواحد قرآن معلم قرآن واحد يحفظ معاه هل ذا يدل على deficiency in their intention?
Well, if you need a teacher?
To require somebody that you perhaps revere, somebody that will give you a weekly goal, a weekly portion to memorize. And
If the
constant
ultimate
awakening.
intention is, if you're really intending to work against yourself and your laziness and your deficiency, weakness, by forcing yourself to commit with the teacher so that you can't come to the teacher at the end of the week and tell him I did not memorize, you'll feel too shy to do this. Basically, ultimately you want the reward of Allah, but you want to get around your weaknesses and have some measured periodic goals and have someone to monitor those measured periodic goals and to hold you accountable for reaching them. So ultimately, it is still within the scope of Allah's pleasure. If your ultimate goal is the pleasure of Allah. But while you're seeking the pleasure of Allah, you're trying to get around your own weaknesses and you're trying to get help on yourself and yourself's weaknesses. That's fine.
When it comes to our children, and especially when they're still underage, not at the age of adolescence, they can make good choice themselves. How do you encourage them to like start that path coming closer to Allah without making it seem like it's such a burden on them? Like for example, children want to play, like that's all they want to do, play whatever toys that they have. Well, you also want them to dedicate maybe some of their time to maybe memorizing Quran or reciting or sitting down, and learning some beneficial knowledge. How do you make it that they don't feel like it's such a burden over them and taking away from what they think is enjoyment and encourage them to start coming closer to Allah and achieving these levels that we're learning?
Well, there are so many ways. The first stage of the children's lives, there is the so-called faith through association, and then faith through persuasion, and faith through ownership of your faith. In the first stages, faith through association is before the child is capable of abstract thinking or operational thinking. Faith is basically an affiliation, like an emotional affiliation. And that's why we keep on telling the people at the masajid, be kind to the children, because in this stage, their worldview is basically based on how they are being treated. So if you treat them badly, and then they go to the kindergarten or so on, and the teacher is so, just this fluffy attitude of, love and niceness and stuff, and then you can imagine what happens to the child, in terms of his perception of his surroundings, and basically his worldview is being constructed this early on, emotionally, not intellectually. So the first stage is when you need to befriend them, and then you need to make them love you as an individual, as a parent. And then after they get into some operational thinking, which is first not abstract, and between age 7 to 11, it is concrete operational thinking, that it is not very abstract, then you need to give them information that will help them, basically black and white information that will help build their worldview correctly, And this can happen partly by suggestion, which could even start before age 7, and partly by direct relaying of information. Suggestion is when you basically through role modeling and through hints and gestures. So when you're so excited that you say Alhamdulillah, when you receive great news and your first reactions to say Alhamdulillah, this will suggest to the child that Allah is the source of all goodness, bounties and favors and so on, without you doing much effort to relate that to the child. And then when they get into adolescence, then role modeling will always be there, because if they see that Islam brought happiness to you, and serenity, tranquility, comfort, and so on, they get affected by this and they get touched by this. But adolescents are capable of abstract operational thinking, which basically you could rationalize with them, you could reason with them, you could talk to them about the superiority of our faith, our teachings, and so on and so forth. So there is much room for education here. Role modeling will always be there. You know, those emotional bonding is always there. There is room for education, a large room for education for adolescents. But sometimes kids are not really interested in education. Some kids are not interested in your education. And some people are more hands-on than others, and they like to do things. So participation in activities, in good activities, that do not necessarily involve basketball, but they should involve basketball and, you know, whatever other balls. But the idea here is kids are not always wanting this, but kids want sports, you know, per se, are forms of social mingling. So if you have any activity that involves social mingling, where they can bond with their fellow Muslims and they can feel good about participating in a good activity for a good cause, such as if you arrange activities at your masjid, for instance, to collect clothes drive or food shelf or something of that nature, or collect some relief materials for people in some third world country and so on. And you involve the youth in those activities, they will like this activity. They will learn so much while they are participating in such activities. So I think that this is the thing that is lacking the most in our communities, is activities that will be attractive to the youth, where they can learn and grow together without being lectured necessarily, or the direct lecturing style of education. Yes. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ did with most of the Sahaba, by the way. Most of the Sahaba were involved in good work, but they were not, most of the Sahaba were not scholars.
It's related to this question.
We're done? Okay. Can we, are you coming tomorrow? Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow.
Only because the Sheikh has another engagement, inshallah.
Inshallah.